Hello and welcome to Business Lunch. I'm Nisha Podar, and with me as always is my co-anchor Pavitra Parekh. So let's begin with the markets today, and it's a good day in the markets. Look how shining bright green the market screen is really looking. 0.65% up on Nifty 50 at the moment, comfortably above the 17,700 levels with over 100 points gain. And in fact, in the middle, there was a little bit of choppiness, but at lunch hour, there is some more fuel to the market, I must say. So Sensex, Nifty, both 0.6% up in trade. Bank Nifty is the one which is outperforming the key indices, close to 1% up in trade at the moment. And mid-caps also showing a fair bit of outperformance. Advanced decline ratio looking quite healthy. In fact, more than double of the advancing stocks that compared to the declines. On my screen at the current moment, some of the heavyweights which are really showing a lot of traction is that HDFC Life, UPL, Grasim, Shree Cement doing extremely well. And from the financials, Kotak Mahindra Bank is with a gain of 1.75%, along with some of the auto counters also adding to the weight. Not to forget that Bharti Airtel, with that stock announcement of the deal with Singtel, is 0.8% up in trade at the moment. Pavitra.
Well, absolutely. This is a good-looking screen, right? So not just for our own markets, even if you take a look at the Asian markets, the Dow futures, all of them holding up well. Hang Seng, for instance, is seeing gains of over 3% right now. The rest of the Asian markets all well in the green. Dow futures up over 250 points. So all in all, looks like we're well positioned ahead of, all of the all-important Jackson Hole meet that we have. In terms of stocks, Nisha did mention the big banks, but some of the smaller ones as well, the likes of RBL. You have an IDFC First Bank. That one is doing well. Even a DCB bank is faring well in trade. On the downside, it is some of the pharma names. Lupin, of course, on news flow, and you have Cipla also, which is under some pressure, and some of the larger tech names. But in terms of cues, that is what is all important. The FNO expiry will play out today, and we have the Jackson Hole meeting, which starts today at night. And we also have the jobless claims, which will be out. So that is all important to track as far as the market move is concerned. But with that, let's move on and talk to you about the key cue that I just mentioned, which is that central bankers, finance ministers, academics, as well as financial market participants from all around the world will be meeting in Wyoming's Jackson Hole Valley to discuss the burning economic and financial issues, including, of course, inflation. Investors will also keenly be watching out for cues on the Fed's rate hike trajectory from Chairman Jerome Powell's speech tomorrow. So ahead of that summit, Minneapolis Fed President Neil Kashkari said that embedded inflation remains the biggest fear, and a more aggressive rate hike trajectory may be needed to bring it lower to comfortable levels. Listen in.
The big fear that I have in the back of my mind is if we're wrong and markets are wrong, and that this inflation is much more embedded at a much higher level than we appreciate or markets appreciate, then we're going to have to be more aggressive than I anticipate, probably for longer, to bring inflation back down.
All right, and staying with that big story that we are tracking today, the global developments and the expectations from the Fed, let us also listen into some more opinion coming in from Nuveen Saira Malik and also Rockefeller International's Ruchir Sharma on this particular subject. Listen in.
Going into Jackson Hole this week, we think there'll be two key messages. One will be slowing rate of interest rate increases, but we don't see the Fed giving out a timeline for the pivot. That's because even though headline inflation is peaked, there's a lot of sticky components of core inflation like wages and rent, and that's going to make it challenging for the Fed to give out a timeline for where they may pivot and cut interest rates. So we aren't surprised to see the market selling off after the July rally, which was based on the hopes of a Fed pivot in early 2023.
I think that if you look at emerging markets, there are about 150 developing countries out there. So I think that the Fed's decision has a different impact on different markets. But clearly the most vulnerable to me is China, because, we've spoken so much about inflation and how inflation is rising everywhere. But one country that is still suffering from possible deflation is China. Their ability to stimulate and cut interest rates is going to be constrained by the fact that the Fed is increasing interest rates because that accelerates capital outflows from China. They don't want a repeat of that. The currency has already depreciated around 7% or so this year.
All right, that is some important opinion that we're bringing you ahead of the Jackson Hole Symposium that starts today. But with that, let's move on and talk about some stock-specific news for our own markets now. Airtel's promoter entity, Bharti Telecom, is looking to hike stake in the company, with Singtel set to sell 3.3% stake to the promoter entity. Nimesh is here to bring us up to speed with all of the details. Nimesh.
This is the official disclosure which came from Bharti last late night, wherein it's an indication that Singtel, which owns a little over 13%, in direct entity will sell 3.3% stake at a valuation of close to 2.2 Singapore billion. So that works out to close to 13,000 crores. Now, because both are promoter entities, it looks like it's going to be an off-market transaction between the two promoters. So Singtel will sell 3.3 and the Bharti promoter entity will buy out in Bharti Airtel. That's an arrangement which was officially disclosed. Now, beyond this 3.3%, it doesn't look like there will be further selling from Singtel, at least in the near term. That's number one. And two, there is a disclosure that going forward there could be further readjustments of the stakes between the two promoter entities. So that's the official disclosure. So the market is reacting positively. The stock is because one, the belief is that this will not be in the open market; it will be an off-market transaction. So there will be no supply overhang, and B, the fact that there's not going to be further selling from Singtel, at least in the near term. That's a relief rally. So that's why stock is reacting positively. But in a big corporate development, Singtel has decided to sell or transfer 3.3% stake in Bharti Airtel to the Bharti promoters, and most likely, what I understand from sources, is going to be an off-market transaction.
Right, Nimesh, thanks for all those details. A big transaction coming in the large telecom company. But if you remember and jog your memory, just a few weeks back, Singtel had stated that they don't mind illuminating some part of their shareholding in Bharti Airtel. Illuminating being a better word for probably profit-taking or monetizing a bit of it. That's what they're aiming to do. Shifting focus to Lupin then, and that stock is under pressure. Today is in focus with the company yet to receive the approval for key inhaler drug Spiriva generic. In another update, the company has entered into an exclusive licensing agreement with Japan's IROM group for denosumab. That is something that is coming up. Ekta can tell us better with these tongue twisters. Ekta, fill us in.
Thanks for that. Well, I'll start with the big piece of news for Lupin, which is basically on Spiriva generic. The company has mentioned that they have received a complete response letter for Spiriva generic. Now, Spiriva generic in particular is an inhaler drug. It's $700 million in terms of size. And the street was anticipating some development on it in August of 2022. That is because they had a target action date from the US drug regulator. Now, what has happened is that they have instead received queries from the US drug regulator as per the this target action date that they have now stands missed. What this means is that the street is still anticipating that this particular launch was expected to take place in Q4. If they get approval by Q4 and the US FDA is satisfied with the queries which have been answered by the company, then they should probably be able to launch the drug. It's a $700 million drug. They could probably make $100 million if in case there are 3 companies which have launched the drug. So that means that there could be an authorized generic, the innovator, as well as Lupin. And then the minimum that they could make could be as much as $100 million. So it is expected to be a lucrative opportunity, but now there is a possible delay which the street is going to factor in. That's on Spiriva generic, but separately, the company has entered into an exclusive licensing agreement with the Japanese company IROM Group. This is for licensing of a biosimilar denosumab, which is basically used for post-menopause osteoarthritis. So it's basically to help the bone density. And they are going to be conducting clinical trials along with Lupin, register, distribute, and market this particular biosimilar in the Japanese markets.
All right, Ekta, thanks a lot for taking us through all of that news flow on Lupin. In fact, Ekta was just mentioning all right, we don't have those bites right now for you, but we will try to play out some bites of the conversation that we had with the Lupin management in just a bit as well. Let's move on and talk about the insurance space. That sector is seeing some crucial fundamental changes in just the last few months. Recently, CNBC-TV18 exclusively reported on the regulator's plans of setting up a platform for sales, servicing and claims of insurance policies. Now, speaking at the CII summit, the IRDAI chairman has confirmed the development. He also said that the insurance industry is very excited about the growth targets as well, which was again a CNBC-TV18 news break, isn't it?
We are trying to also encourage the industry to come on board to create a digital platform, which we may call it the Bima Sugam. With this platform will be utilized for selling the insurance products, for servicing the policyholder, and also for settling the claims. It will be a plug-and-play solution, and all the insurance companies get onboarded to that system. And I would presume this would be a game changer as far as insurance is concerned. We have very high aspirational growth targets now. I've recently had a meeting with all our CEOs, and we have tried to discuss and share that what should be our growth targets. Now, if you look at the GDP, the gross written premium in 2017, it was $16 billion US. 2022, we are at 115. We have grown at around 10.5%. Now, our target in 2027 is to reach 500 billion USD. We have kept an aspirational growth target of 34%. And I'm glad to inform that many of my CEOs are quite ecstatic about these targets, and they're all raring to go. Premium to GDP, 3.7 currently, 3.7 in 2017. Currently, it is 4.2. We want to reach 8 to 10% by 2027, and that will entail a growth of 16%.
All right, some big changes coming up in the insurance sector. With that, we'll slip into a short breather on Business Lunch. But remember, it's an action-packed day in the courtrooms with multiple issues of national importance